Operations Committee together, please. First, we're going to have the prayer by Tyler Mays and then the Pledge of Allegiance by Mayor Frank. Please stand.
Please bow with me. Dear Father, thank you so much, God, for this beautiful day that you have given us, God, and the health to join together and to do your business, God, and that I ask that we, as we come before you tonight, that we put the citizens of Anderson County's interest first, and God, in any decision that we make tonight and throughout our lives, that we do it and glorify you. God, please watch over the men and women who are keeping our county safe and the men and women who are abroad keeping our country safe. I ask all these things in your name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We got the approval of agenda. Any changes, adding?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
we had a referral motion on the senior center for the mayor to make her presentation because she didn't have it at our last meeting and it was referred to this meeting, but it's not on the agenda. And I would like to add that as 4A there.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second. Any discussion on that? All in favor? That'll be 4A. Any other changes, additions? Next is appearance of citizens. Do we have any citizens who'd like to come before this committee? Seeing none, we'll move on with 4A. Mayor?
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, before you get started, I'd like to point out that this presentation was made to the Budget Committee last Thursday also, so this, everybody gets to hear it.
Is there any action taken?
No,
Okay.
I don't think we did anything, did we? It was just a presentation. There is one change, however, on this particular presentation. One of the commissioners noted that I had missed something, which is gas at each of the particular facilities. So we did get that data from Powell Clinch Utility District, and Mr. Chairman, there's an updated. And in my rush, I didn't even note there, that is an annual cost. So I didn't do averages on those. Those are annual costs for gas for each of those years or timelines. Of course, it was only available through November of this year. So do you want me to walk through all of this, or? So we have two proposals on the table. We have the City of Clinton that has offered Anderson County the proposed use of the Armory. A timeline is unknown for that. We know that the plans for Roane State are to vacate the Armory at the existing location. The latest that's on the State of Tennessee website is an anticipated completion of the TCAT Roane State facility in the spring of 2021. And I believe Roane State has their contract with the city through the spring of 2022, or maybe it's July 2022. I can't remember. You have there before you some costs. You're looking at an average total monthly use and cost of $14,237 for the electric at the Armory. Water and sewer, I did not run the averages, but did list the highs and lows there because they're an average, with that amount really isn't worth running the averages. And then you have the annual gas costs there. Other costs ongoing, In the negotiation with Roger Hauk, the city manager, and Mayor Burton is also here tonight if you want him to answer any questions. The prior agreements with the Anderson County School System and then also the existing agreement with Roane State is that if there are capital needs that arise, that there's an expectation that those costs would be shared on a 50-50 basis. The size is approximately 17,000 square feet. The approximate number of parking spaces is 70. That's just me doing an eyeball from Google Earth on that map. So it could be plus or minus a couple of spaces there. Other costs unknown, Anderson County would be responsible for maintenance of the building, so I'm not sure what those annual maintenance costs are or if there are any regular needs at that facility. There is, in your packet, there is a estimate of cost for upgrades from Studio 4 Design. That's the architect and interior designer that went and took a look at the building, did a walkthrough, and looked at some estimated projected construction costs. You'll see there that I also included, that particular copy has notes from Mayor Burton on what he thinks that we could do in terms of everything doesn't need to be done at the beginning, but keep in mind that if those costs do arise, we would be expected to do a cost share. So for instance, you'll see his tabulation there that the city could patch the roof and get us further along the road. And then when we got to time where we would need a new roof, we would have an expectation there of a 50% cost share. There's some other costs there, and you'll see that the architect as well put those in a different color, but I don't have a color copier, so it's just a black and white. It's a lighter color. Those were just based on if the city and the county wanted to completely bring this building up to speed, those are some costs, and they're shaded because the architect viewed those as just essentially optional. One of the costs that's not listed on there is the cost to create a kitchen for the senior program, as a kitchen would be vital to our operations, but that would not be a cost that the city, of course, would be investing in. So we don't have that cost reflected in here on those high and low estimates. I have a list there of my own. This is just Mayor Frank, pros and cons, and you can read through those. It's definitely a pro. That's Mayor Burton's calculations, where he believes we could get those numbers down to with a city just as a move-in price. The city looking at a $254,000 investment. And of course, he would have to go back to the city council and get that approval. And then the county investment being $135,000 or $133,000, it looks like there. That's what that page is, Commissioner Creasy. Pros and cons. Pros, it is $1 a year lease, and then, of course, the ability to partner with the city of Clinton to further our beneficial relationship. It does prevent the vacancy of the Armory once the TCAP facility is constructed. The location is more ideally central to the citizens of the north end of Anderson County. There is room to grow and expand operations and services. It is a pro that we would not own the asset and have the ability to vacate. Cons are any investments made or matched would not be owned by the county. We don't own that asset. The improvement costs do not include the cost to add a kitchen. While there is room to grow and the lease cost is low, you can see that the county would be paying for more space that is unused and therefore more utilities than are actually needed by the program. It is an older facility with potential unknowns for future capital investments. I know this kind of became a point of much focus at the budget meeting, but this was a facility that was constructed to house tanks, so it does have very thick, hard concrete, and we would not be allowed to put anything on top of that main activity area, which is 7,300 square feet. It is an unknown move-in time, and that move is dependent upon the construction of the new facility. And then when you get to the proposed senior facility location at the former Faith Promise Church, you'll see that the size there is approximately 8,800 square feet. It does have 6.65 acres. The approximate number of parking spaces is 100. The average total monthly use and cost for electric is $6,800. No, I'm sorry, that's the average use. The average cost of the monthly bill is $817, and you'll see the timeline there from October 2016 to September 2019. You see the high and low on billing, just as on the Armory. Then the water and sewer, those combined bills are less than $30 a month. I did not run the averages again on that. And then gas, those are the annual costs, same as reflected for the Armory for the same time periods. Other costs, lease is not available, so this is a purchase only cost. At this time, just like the Armory, I don't know the maintenance cost for the building, what those are typically running in an annual year, and any minor repairs. Pros, we would own the asset. The purchase price is less than the appraised value, and I did distribute that to all of you as commissioners, and it is substantially less than the cost to build. The extra acreage can be sold or used for the county for additional purpose, and there was some questions about that at the Budget Committee. The church was originally built in 2003 on one parcel, and in an exchange for an easement on one end of the property for another seller who had an interested buyer, the church was given two forms of compensation, and one of those forms of compensation was an additional almost 3 acres. So during the appraisal process, I noted this in my email to you, I did ask them to value that separately if the county chose to sell that off, or if the county wanted to give it to another government function or government-related agency. It is move-in ready with minor exceptions. It is located more centrally for the Clinton, Claxton, and Oliver Springs area. Technology capabilities and activity room could allow the facility to be used for official government meetings. It already has that set up, just because they were running those church operations that use many of the same needs. The size meets the needs, and we're not paying for utilities on unused space. Cons are, yes, that we do own the asset, so we would not be able to vacate quickly. You'll see that on both. Ownership is in the eye of the beholder, so I put it on both, both sides. Location is further from the north end of Anderson County. There is a kitchen, so it does have the tools necessary to, do food right away, but ideally, the walls should be moved. The design of the building, though, is that there are no load-bearing walls in there, and walls can be configured any way we wanted. So that's the general report. And if there's other information you'd like me to get, I'm more than happy to. We did get an inspection done. We had the appraisal completed, and I didn't go any further than that, pending. There's no sense doing a survey or title search or anything like that if we're not going to purchase the building. But I do have the results of the inspection back, so.
Mr. Jameson?
Did you say that you had it appraised?
Yes, sir.
And how much was that?
Well, by contract with an appraisal like that, you're not allowed to disseminate that information publicly. So I did send it to you in an email. I will say that it is well over what the asking price is. And, oh, Commissioner Mead has it there for you.
Without saying anything, I can just want to, okay, for the one parcel and for the extra lot. Okay.
Thank you.
The county has it on the books at $1 million, but the appraisals take into account depreciation and the number of economic years, or number of years left in economic life, which I didn't bring that with me, but Commissioner Mead may have that. I think it's 25 years or 30.
23.
The economic life is 45 years, and its actual age is 16.
Okay.
The upkeep for the landscaping, would that be on us, obviously? Is that anything you've thought about?
For, at the.
Mowing and landscaping upkeep?
Yes.
Would that just be a Roger department thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does it now for the senior center.
Yes. He doesn't do the cleaning or anything at the existing facility, but if we have any groundskeeping needs or anything, he does take care of that. We also, in some areas, thanks to the sheriff and Mr. Mays, the inmates do help. So for instance, at the industrial park and that entrance, the inmates will help there. So we kind of parse it out.
Mayor,
Excuse me,
go ahead.
The utilities on the church building, where did we get those numbers? From the church?
No, we contacted the utilities directly. So if it is electric, the Clinton Utility Board faxed us that data. It's open for public record. So,
The bills they paid?
yes, yes. So we have their billing and payment history, and that's a public document, and that's what's reported to you in my summary there.
Well, my question is, would we be using more hours, less hours, or about the same hours? Because, see, now that church down there, they don't meet very often.
Right. You know, I don't know. I mean, they're still there, and so their staff is there. You still have to have the heat and cooling on.
You don't have to heat the whole 900 square feet for two people on staff there, do you?
You know, I don't know. I really don't know. I know they would have more use on, you know, Wednesday nights or when they're having children's activities or on the weekend. And the same thing on the armory. It was tough to figure out how to gauge their usage. So for instance, they're not there most of the day. They don't start until the afternoon. Then they do have periods of break. And then I was looking kind of at their year one when they weren't really ramped up very much and they didn't have all their equipment in there is probably a good indicator of what the electric might be in there. But, you know, in terms of, it's hard to gauge that, Commissioner Jameson, because if seniors are in there, they're going to want the heat on. And, you know, I don't know what the armory is looking like in terms of they're in there with equipment running. Does it generate heat? I don't, you know, a lot of those unknowns, I can't really quantify. I just did a, tell me what you paid and what we're running. And you can see the peaks in the winter months and then in the summer months for both facilities, so.
Well, how many days per month or per year would the senior citizens need a facility? 365 days.
They're there Monday through Friday, so 5 days a week.
250, 260 days. Okay.
Except holidays.
What?
We got 13 holidays that they wouldn't be there.
And snow days.
Well, I'm sure.
And snow days.
I'm sure the church doesn't use it that much. Yeah, I really don't know how many, but I don't think they have church every 5 days a week, you know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I've got a
Commissioner
question for the mayor. Mayor, if you were charged with making a decision between the two, what would be your choice? And tell me why.
Commissioner McCamey, I would recommend the Mariner Point facility. And that's just walking into the Armory, and I understand, I understand the value of a dollar lease, but there are a lot of unknowns in terms of capital costs. It is an older facility, and it is much more facility than we need. I know that even with moving out and having enough space to move our operations into another room, that I think for seniors is a hardship. Is it something we can't overcome? No. But I think in terms of operation, maintaining that facility and heating that facility and cooling that facility when we don't need all of that space, I think for that value and what we pay extra, you can actually be purchasing an asset for that differential and those utility costs alone. I'm also, and this kind of became the topic of some debate at Budget Committee. I mean, I grew up working in a daycare with children, and in many ways, seniors have the same physical vulnerabilities as children, only they're not as resilient when it comes to a fall. And when I am looking at a 7,600 square foot area that is concrete, I have a bad back and I have bad knees, and I can tell a difference when I walk at the mall and on this concrete sidewalk, and there is a difference. And that is a very hard surface, and it has a lot of divots in it and a lot of uneven surfaces. I have not asked ADA to look at it, but I understand that the city, that's negotiable whether we grind that floor, do it in-house or not. But from an ADA standpoint, that needs to be done. We have, anyone that's been to the senior center, we have multiple individuals with walkers, and we do have falls, unfortunately. So I think looking at it from we're paying $15,000 or $18,000 a year in lease, and for a small amount more, we could actually purchase that facility.
And how would that work?
You could wrap it up with, we talked about that today, actually, the Finance Committee, the members of Finance Committee did not talk about it, but Scott Gibson did say that we could include it in our bond, in our debt restructuring, our refinancing. We're currently overfunding debt service. There's $160,000 that's been overfunded in that account. The seniors themselves have raised $39,000, which I think would be a contribution towards that end. It could be handled that way, Commissioner.
Okay, there was a couple of other funding options. One was that we partner with the city of, and this is one that I came up with. The city of Oak Ridge pays $35,000 a year right now. They pay $35,000 a year for the court. For the General Sessions 2 court. And what a lot of people don't understand is we put $800,000 into that refinancing, I mean remodeling for the court that the city of Oak Ridge is supposed to pay for. I mean, that's in the private act, that they furnish a building that would house the judge and the circuit court clerk, circuit court clerk's office. We put $800,000 in that, and that was part of the $1.4 million that we borrowed when we bought the building at 205 South Main. and I know 205 South Main is a bad thing to mention, but we put $800,000 of the county's taxpayer money into that building down there that they were supposed to pay for. And my proposal would be to raise that to $40,000, and then with the $18,000 that we've got, that we're paying in rent, would be $58,000 a year. And a 10-year capital outlay note for $500,000 costs $56,000 a year. So we would net $2,000 that would pay for any extra utilities or anything like that, you know, from the senior center. If the city of Oak Ridge paid 40, and for a 10-year period, and that's partnering with the city. We put $800,000 in it, they pay us back half of that, basically at $40,000. It'd only be a $5,000 raise for the city. I've asked Jay to work up a memorandum of understanding, or whatever you need to call it, not a lease, but something, you know, that for the city to look at. And I think that would work, and that would buy the building down there, and we would own the building. And then if we did decide to sell 205 South Main, any monies there could go toward, you know, helping pay off that. So there's several different funding options. And with that being said, I would like to make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we send this to the full commission without a recommendation, and ask the mayor and the finance director and Jay to come up with a sales agreement. Jay would do the sales agreement. The mayor and the finance director would come up with the funding option and have it presented to us at next Monday's commission meeting.
We got a motion, do we have a second? Have a second. Discussion?
Before we vote on that, there may be some people in the audience that may want to say something.
Oh, I was
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
give Mayor Burton
Okay,
the
well, I
opportunity.
didn't know whether,
Yeah,
there's other people might want to talk too.
yeah. Yeah, I was gonna let everybody talk.
Okay.
We came upon this, and Mr. Creasy might remember, when we bought the land for the convenience center. We publicly said how much we were willing to pay for it, and that became the price. I'm not opposed to buying this, but just because they're asking $500 doesn't mean that is the price. So, I don't know, Jay, can we go into, not now, but in some point, executive session to say what we're really willing to pay for this, rather than just saying we're willing to pay their price?
There's no current executive session provision that allows that. There's ways that we can talk about it. We can communicate through emails with me.
Mm-hmm.
And we can assign somebody to negotiate with the owner of the property. And through communications with me, we can get a base bid, or we can come up with it that way. I think we could, if the mayor's willing to do it, she could take forward a bid on the property and see if we can't negotiate something a little bit better, if that's the route you want to take.
Okay.
But if I understand the motion, Robert, you need the purchase agreement on the real estate, and you want to go ahead and MOU also.
Yeah, if that's the funding option, you know,
I'll just take the blanks.
and this, I'm not sure about negotiating on the price. They sent us a letter where first they contacted the mayor, and then they sent a letter stating that they had it on the market for $850,000, and that they were willing to reduce that just for the county for use as a senior center for $500,000.
Sure.
That they wanted to partner with the county on it. So I don't think they're going to take any less. I mean, I think that's the asking price, and you know, if we're willing to take it. And the thing about it is, it's on our books for $1,080,000, and we go after grant funds all the time on 80-20, and some of them we go on a 50-50. If this is $1 million building, we get it for $500,000, it's the same as getting a $500,000 grant. You know, that would be an asset to the county. It would help offset 205 South Main as far as our books are concerned. If you remember when Natalie was here, she said that that was a black mark against us, having a building that was not worth what we had give for it. This asset takes that black mark away if we own the building. But I just feel like it'd be a waste of time to try to, I mean, they gave us until November the 30th to make up our mind, and then the commission couldn't make up their mind, so we asked for an extension, and they gave us till the 17th, and we meet on the 16th, so they'll need to know the next day after this commission meeting.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
And I do, to Commissioner McCamey's point, I understand what you're saying about Oak Ridge, but I do think if you look at what we're already investing in rent, I think I can work with a finance director. You're looking at a finance payment of $25,000 a year approximately, according to Mr. Gibson. So we're looking at $7,000 a year to come up with to be able to purchase the facility instead of leasing. And I think, you know, working with Robbie, I think we can come up with some options for commission, and that way we don't have to ask Oak Ridge to
Well, I mean,
re-examine that agreement or anything like that, so.
I just
I'm
threw
just
that
throwing
out
that
there.
out
I
there.
knew that was one funding option because and another thing, you know, last month, we give the highway department $500,000 to buy dump trucks. And it was voted on, and then I think it was unanimous. And it turned out the road superintendent's fund balance is almost as much as ours is. And he could have taken it out of his own, but, you know, I mean, I voted for it because I thought it was it was something that was needed. But it's like, when we talk about buying a building, that the seniors deserve, I think they deserve it. You know, they've built, every school in this county has been built and paid for by our seniors. And the ones that were built prior to them being taxpayers, they've all been remodeled. And, you know, these seniors have paid for that. 65 cents out of every dollar that the seniors pay in this county go to our county school system. And the majority of them do not have kids in school. I'm one of the few that has a child in school that's 70 years old. So, but you know, they don't gripe about it. And I think the seniors are just being held hostage because of 205 South Main. And, you know, that was a mistake that we made. The seniors didn't make the mistake. We done that as a commission. And I think most of the commissioners have realized that it was a mistake and we need to do something with it. And I've got something I want to discuss about that later on in the meeting. But, you know, I just feel like we need to move another year, a year and a half, maybe 2 years of staying in that building that we're in is going to be a nightmare. We're just overcrowded. People are walking over each other up there because, you know, we just don't have the room, 2,400 square feet. And I think it's a perfect location. It's a lot closer to the district that I represent than the one that we're in right now, and much closer than the Armory would be. And I think it's a good idea, and that's why I want to send it on to full commission so we can make a decision next Monday, and we can let the church know then on Tuesday morning.
Mayor Burt, you want to speak, or?
First of all, I want to say, as I said before, I think y'all are in a great position to have two, I think, strong options. And I respect y'all, whichever option you go towards. Anything, I got my hand slapped a little bit by my fellow councilman last time, but anything I'm offering or saying that we can do or what we're recommending, of course, has to be passed by full council. But Roger Houck and myself did sit down today and look at the numbers. And just a couple of things we were talking about. And I'm not here to debate the mayor. I think gave a great presentation. She has some good ideas also. But as far as some of the cost, you know, we always look at what you want and what you need. So out of this, we really focused on what our needs are. For example, the polishing the multi-purpose floor, I mean, let me step back just for a second. We looked at the low side of these numbers because the high side is way out of whack, so to speak. Not a technical word to use. But Roger Houck's done this for about 35 years, and he has a pretty good idea of what things cost and either to replace or repair. But the floor being $36,500 is a very high price, and we didn't include that in what we would do. But if we did need to do it, we could always just patch up what needs to be fixed on the floors. I personally have never noticed that, but have never looked at the floors in that way. But, you know, a great replacement if those floors are too hard. There's some great vinyl flooring, laminate flooring that floats on the floors that would cost much less than $36,000 for that gym area, just to give you an example. But anyway, that's not included in what we were looking at. So the roof, we had put down $60,000. I mean, we can still repair the roof that doesn't need to be replaced, and the ones that we do, this probably that section where the offices are, we can totally replace that. Roger's estimate was $60,000, and we assumed that cost along with the HVAC cost of $136,000 on that. What we've asked the county to assume would be replacing the windows and the doors, and also to renovate the restrooms. That'd be a shared cost between both of us, and also be the fees as far as the construction contingencies, design fees, insurance, and things like that. And that's where we got the $133,700 to be a contribution to the county, from the county, and the city would chip in $254,700. Now, this isn't, we didn't propose this to say this is just what we need to do right now and we'll do the other stuff later. I don't see a lot of stuff down the road that we need to do with the exception of the roof. And it may last 5 years, it may last another 10 years. But rest assured, if you're partnering with somebody, it's always going to just cost you half and not the full price. The things they put in there as far as the parking and the handicap outside, I mean, that's not needed to be done. The painting that was recommended inside, I think someone talked about, there's people inside either the county or the city or volunteers. We can get the jail people maybe even come in and paint that. So that's not a real cost in my mind. That's something that can be done outside of this and done internally. So that's the total cost on that. And a couple of things I wanted to bring up. The electric bill and the gas bill, to me, is a real hard, it's apples and oranges. I would think probably the Armory is going to be more expensive. It's a larger building, it's an older building. But keep in mind, we do the energy efficiency things that we talked about. The windows are the same windows that were there when probably that building was built. I mean, you should probably just go and leave the windows open with all the heat that's coming out of those upper windows because they're single pane, very old windows. So doing things like that with the doors and the windows, the replacements we're going to make with the roof, it's definitely going to have a big impact on our electric and gas bills. I mean, I don't know how much that would be, but that would certainly be a reduction in price on a monthly basis. The kitchen's there. When the alternative school was there, there was a kitchen back there. Now there's no appliances, and I would imagine that there's a lot of appliances that are there today that could be transferred over to the Armory. So the space is there, it just has to be equipped, so to speak. So I don't think I don't know why they couldn't bring the appliances over from where the senior center is now to the Armory to pretty much fill that space up and the needs will be met. So again, it's $1 a year. If you ask me if you want to either lease or buy, I'm a little partial about that as far as in this case, you don't have to do any type of home inspection or building inspection. It's ours to own. If it's broken, then we're going to fix it or y'all can leave. I mean, y'all have that flexibility and not be stuck with a big bill. I just want to come and just kind of show you we just didn't throw these numbers together. We really talked about it and try to make it still economical for y'all to make that move to the Armory if you so choose.
Any questions of Mayor Burton?
Scott, you put the windows and doors on us. Can you tell me why you did that?
Well, it just came from that original conversation when I first came up. We were talking about 100,000 apiece, and I was just trying to keep you all as close to that commitment that I gave you and what the county or the city council said about 100,000. So we could split that up in different ways, but I tried to make it as fair as you guys. Not necessarily all the expense goes to the windows in this case. You could just give a lump sum and you put it anywhere you want to, as far as that example. But that was just a good number. That and with half the restrooms came up to that 100,000. Then we added the contractor services and insurance and taxes and all that stuff to that too. Anything else?
Scott, did the architect mention anything about, under the new International Building Code, about any building over 10,000 has to be sprinkled now if it's used for?
I don't know anything about that. I would
I
say
had-
that's probably a grandfather rule that's,
I had
in my experience.
I had I guess you call him a fire marshal, said that any building over 10,000, if you bring it up to ADA standards, it had to be sprinkled, and I noticed that's not in here, and I don't know why the architect didn't mention it one way or the other, but
Yeah, we can
that
verify.
building's what, 15,000 square feet?
What's it, 15, Terry, is it 15
The architect had listed 17,000.
or 17,000?
17,000.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So that would be well over the 10,000.
Yeah.
And that would be pretty expensive to sprinkle that building.
If that's true, I've never heard anything
I'll
that's
try to
needed.
check that out tomorrow.
Yeah, I can look on our side too and see. Okay.
I wanted to propose an amendment to his motion.
Okay, let's get rid of, let's do all the discussion, because I got a few questions myself after everybody else gets done.
You have one for me?
Well, I got one for Commissioner Jameson, because he represents that district, and I'm sure, I know you live there too, in that neighborhood. How do the people feel that live in that neighborhood about it being there? Are they acceptable to it, or what do you hear?
It's both ways.
Okay,
But, but I always say, it's kind of joking around there, everybody wants a sidewalk, but nobody wants it on their side of the street. They always want another side. So you're going to get, you're not going to get 100%. The people that want one way or the other. And I think bottom line is you just do what's best.
Okay, and then the thing that may upset some people, but my constituents, and this way I feel as well, is that we've got an issue with 205 Main Street that I feel like we need to deal with before we do anything. Whether that's a 2-cent tax reduction to pay the taxpayers back for the money that we spent, or what a plan, an affirmative plan that we can do to eliminate that problem that we created. And that's what I want to see first. I think that we've got two really good plans here. I think that Faith Promise Church at that price is a good investment. But I think also that we need to take care of the mistake that we made first, or have a direction of what we're going to do to correct that. Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a similar concern as the chairman. And I have mentioned that in past meetings about 205 Main. I'm not sure that we couldn't put the seniors there now. If we really put an effort into it, I think we could put them in that front part of the facility. But I want to, first of all, thank you, Mayor, and Mayor Frank, both. I think you both have given us some good options, and I want to commend Mayor Frank on the job you've done of this research and making the comparisons. excellent report. And that estimate that we got in appraisal, that was a fine job that guy did. Very professional. It was excellent. And I think I commented to you on that in an email. And you make it very hard for us to turn down that purchase of that. I mean, you and Robert are presenting us with an excellent reason to go ahead and move in that direction. But the feedback that I've been getting is very similar to my fellow commissioner here, that we just purchased that building. We haven't done anything with it. We've spent the taxpayers' money, and it's just sitting there. They feel the ones that have contacted me feel very strong that now we're going to ignore that and go and make another huge purchase at their expense. I'm not quite ready. It's hard to resist the proposal both of you have made, but I'm not really set on moving on either one at this moment.
I don't think we need to hold the senior citizens hostage any longer. I wasn't on the commission, and I don't know how I would have voted when they bought the Main Street site up here. But how long has it been? 3 or 4 years? It's been at least 3, hasn't it? It's time to make a decision. And I know everybody's not gonna like what we pay or how much we don't pay and all this kind of stuff, but we need to make a decision right now because these people have been waiting long enough. That's just one person's idea.
Mr. Mead?
There's been a lot of talk about fixing what we've done because of the big mistakes we made. The biggest mistake we made is not provide the seniors with a senior center.
Amen.
That was the big thing, okay? The fact that there were some issues with the 205, I think we were misled and we allowed that to happen perhaps. Then we found that the building was really not economically viable to use for the senior center because of ongoing problems with the roofs and mold and other things. But the big mistake we made was not getting into senior centers. So now not doing something to get a senior center because of something we did in the past that we can't fix. You understand, once you lose your wallet, you've lost your wallet. And we kind of lost our wallet when we bought 205. That money is gone. Now if we can find somebody to buy it for something, we can get some of it back. But basically, we put ourselves in a position where we have an asset that we paid too much money for, and we can't sell it for anywhere near what we owe on it. That's not the seniors' fault. So I'm all in favor of moving ahead and having commission make a decision to do something that's actually going to result in having a senior center that's usable and functional and available on relatively short notice, not waiting until 2021 or 2022 potentially, having something that can happen right away. And we have an option to do that, and it's like somebody already said, it's like getting a $400,000 or $500,000 grant. Thanks.
One other thing, I'm all for moving the seniors into a new building, but I'm also all for paying the taxpayers back. If we make a decision in one night to buy a building, we make a decision in one night to pay the taxpayers back. 2-cent tax reduction for 1 year.
We can't do that until next year.
That's next year. But you can put that in a plan. And that's the type of thing that I say that we can go out and reach out to the people and say, look, we did make a mistake with your money, and this is what we're going to do to pay it back. Now, when we did the tax increase, I was very vocal about alternative plans. Our trustee has come up with $2.7 million. Our our sales tax has increased through October of 3 million. If you do the numbers, that's a tax increase twice, right? So that's all I'm saying, is if we come up with a plan that says this is how we're going to pay the taxpayers back, the seniors do. You know, I agree. We do need that, but we do need to take care of our responsibility as well. Did you have an amendment?
Yes. This property, it looks like we're pretty much leaning towards the Mariner Point property. This property's been for sale for several years, and I would like to amend his suggestion that we offer them $450,000. I believe they'll take that because they want to get rid of that property, and we want the property. And that $50,000 would pay to move the wall and fix the kitchen and pay the first month's electric bill. And I'll make that amendment to his motion.
Do I have a second on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Could you make that in a separate motion?
No, it's an amendment to your motion.
Well, I mean, my motion was to send it to the full commission without a recommendation. And you're attaching a recommendation to it. But if you can make that in a separate motion, then I'll second it, you know, if you want to make that in a separate
In
motion.
other words, we need to vote this one up or down, and
Yeah.
then we can.
Okay,
entertain
that's
it.
fine.
Any other discussion on the original motion to send this to full commission without a recommendation? Mayor?
Just I wanted to address a couple of points. One, Commissioner Creasy's points and concerns about 205. I am continuing to work with Roger on how to address 205. In fact, we just finished it took a little while, but we did a hazardous materials survey because one of the options that we would like to look at on the table, the highest and best use, if you recall from that appraisal, is a vacant parcel. And so good news is there was no evidence of asbestos or lead or anything there that would increase the cost of a demolition. So Roger is currently working with Catherine on getting some estimates on what demolition would actually cost. So we are still working on that and recouping funds for the county. To Commissioner Mead's point, right on point on this, Faith Promise vacated their facility in September. And so this offer, they came to me early on in confidence because they had not even put anything on the market yet, and they were doing a big surprise announcement for the community. So they came and they knew what we were struggling with here, and they said, look, we're willing to offer this, you know, if you'll, we want it to be viewed as a partnership, and that's why we're offering the reduced rate. To Commissioner Mead's point, buying an asset that is worth well over the assessed value, whether we look at our private appraisal or we look at the county's appraisal, we're offsetting the loss that we have on 205. We are fixing that. So the county is coming out equal if we get that asset. However, we're going to get something out of 205, and we're working on that. And that's my personal commitment to you and to the taxpayer is to get every penny we can out of that. And I think we can do that. It's just how we approach it, and you know, I want to get those demolition numbers and do a different sales pitch, because it's a different sales pitch when someone can envision what's there and they don't have to look at that work and then looking at what is there now. And then the other point, I'm more conservative in my approach. So for instance, with ESG, they're looking at their most conservative numbers. And the reason I like what they do is because, as we heard today at Finance, I think our chairman of Finance Committee, Dr. Parrott, noted they were $280,000 over in 1 year over ESG's
Proposed
Yes. I like, not wishing for the best. When we're dealing with an old building, I think we saw this play out at the DARC building. We were all hoping it would be 500,000. But when you're dealing with those older windows, and I know Commissioner Yeager's even pitching himself out of his own wallet to address some of those issues. When you're dealing with old buildings, it's best to look a little on the higher side of what it might cost to remedy. You just don't know what you're going to encounter. And Emory Valley Center, by the way, they've sent a report. They're just about to finish up. They had issues with fire marshal. They got that signed off. Now they've got to get their full sign-off from the city of Oak Ridge. But they ran into those very same issues remodeling that new facility there that was the original historical building. So just to keep that in mind, when it comes to remodeling an older facility, I don't want to wish for the best. I want to wish for the worst and then be pleasantly surprised and have some overage. So those are just some comments.
Commissioner James.
Me, I went to the property assessor's office and got some information about the two lots down at the Mariner Point where the church owns it. And and I got a copy of the assessment, and it was assessed at $1 million. And I said, well, who did the assessing? They said, the owner of the property. Well, my gosh, if I'm gonna sell something and I get to put my own assessment on there, I'm gonna have me a nice assessment on there. And I said, well, how did they get away with that? Well, it's a church, it's nonprofit, and you can assess your property what you want. So that's where they came up with the $1 million. They've been asking $700,000. Nobody took it. Now they've come down to $500,000. And that's why I think they'll take $450,000. Now, if you want to go ahead and run the risk on that, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine too. But I think they want to sell that property because they spend a lot of money remodeling property up here. They're leasing. They didn't buy that part of the shopping center. They leased that. And the reason why they are leasing is they're probably going to build a church somewhere in that vicinity rather than lease. But they like to lease. I have some friends that have been active in that church for 10 or 12 years, and they like to lease for a while to see if they can get a big congregation. Then they build them a building, which that makes sense. But I think that I don't see anything wrong with offering them $450,000 because they can only say one or two things.
Mr. Yeager.
The suggested senior contribution that you talked about, how firm is that, and how do we officially receive that?
It's actually almost at 44,000.
Okay.
And,
On up front, Sheree.
about a little over half of that is pledges, based on what you all decide.
And how do we officially make that part of this purchase if we do that? Instead of just saying, yeah, we'll give that to you.
Come forward if you don't
And I
care.
go and say-
Sheree, come forward, please, so the folks at home can hear you.
Then I just go and say, I need your money. I need your pledge.
Okay.
The others in the county general fund already actually donated.
What's that balance?
What was it, 20, how much you have now?
It's almost 44.
But I mean, not pledges, in actual cash that's been deposited.
Now that I don't know, I'll have to check.
But it's over half, right? 20,
It's probably right around half.
Any other discussion before we vote on the motion to send it to full commission with that recommendation? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Motion passes. Now, did you want to make a
I
motion?
make a motion that we offer them $450,000 for the property.
the mayor, You want the mayor to do it, or the chairman, or who?
Whoever's representing us, the county,
That would be the mayor, I would think.
okay?
I'll second the motion.
A motion second, any discussion on the motion? Commissioner Meade.
I'm concerned that if we go back with a cut rate offer, that we're gonna insult them, and they're gonna just say, okay, well then, the heck with you. We tried to do everything we could, and now you're trying to nickel dime us. I really see that as being a possibility, because I know if I were in their shoes, and anybody that thinks that we're paying too much needs to really study this independently prepared appraisal that includes comparison to similar buildings that have been sold in this area recently. They're right on with what they came out as, I think, as they came out for the value of that land and building. And it represents us getting one heck of a deal. This document right here is what we didn't have for 205. An update, well-analyzed analysis of what the property's worth was. We have that now, so we can avoid making the mistake we made with 205.
Did you get a second for that? Yeah, okay.
Any other discussion? And this is for the mayor to offer 450. That is if it passes full
Ask them to
commission.
move And have, if you can get that information before Monday's meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion passes. Mayor.
Thank y'all, Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Mayor. You too. See ya.
To Commissioner Yeager's point, perhaps would you want to do a motion or ask for a letter of commitment from the seniors that if this went through, that those funds would in fact go to the project?
I think that would be fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, the money's in a special code that's only gonna be used for building. And that's the same way the pledges are wrote up also, so it's not like it can be used for something else.
We get donations on a daily basis, but if they specify that it's for the building fund, then it's deposited into that special account.
Can we put a dollar figure on this, or how do you?
Well, I guess maybe it's out of order if she's already got some that isn't sitting in a fund. I mean, basically, it would only be a commitment of the pledges since it's not actually existing, so.
The pledges in the building fund,
Yes,
and what's
yes.
already in the building fund.
Yes.
Okay, I make a motion that we accept, is that a fair enough word?
Yes.
Accept the amount of money that's in the building fund and the pledges that are expected to be received into the building fund to go toward the purchase of this property.
Got a motion, we have a second.
I'll second that.
Discussion?
I have a question. If we do take ownership of this building, there's got to be some walls removed and the kitchen improved and things of that nature. Is that not correct?
That is correct. Or no, that's the way I read it.
There is only one wall that would need to be moved in order to expand the kitchen, but it is ready. It's walk-in ready.
You have no idea what it would cost?
I haven't gone that far, but I could get that information for you.
Well, what other costs would be incurred for this building to be what they need? Well, not what necessarily what they want, but what they need.
Sure. Well, I do have the inspection that I can distribute to you all that has a list from a buyer's perspective of immediate needs or immediate deficiencies, if you want to look at it that way. So for instance, there's a fire exit sign that is there, but it's not operable. So there's either missing a connection or there's an issue. There's one particular outlet that isn't kicking properly. So I guess when they test it, it's supposed to kick. There's a few things like that, but looking at that major list, there was nothing that was, and I'll distribute that to you all. There was nothing that was going to be like $25,000 to do this or $10,000. It was, I would send that out basically to a contractor or let Roger look at it and say, hey, what would this take?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All for me.
We have a motion, and
We would need about 10,000 of that money to redo the kitchen and to buy a commercial stove and hood, which would be required in the city of Clinton. The commercial stove's about 2,500, the hood's about 2,800. And then the remainder of that would be to move the wall and, you know, expand the kitchen, but 10,000 would take care of the kitchen, and it would be a commercial kitchen, which is what we need. We're using residential stove right now, 2 of them. And if we had the commercial stove, we wouldn't need that.
If we could get the commercial stove for that price, I don't think it would take $10,000.
Well, to move the wall and to extend that one wall,
I've got some,
Yeah.
one of my workers is a retired master carpenter. And I think that him and some volunteers could actually move that wall.
okay, we'd need 6,000 then for the commercial stove and hood. I know what they cost because I've got them on my phone. I hear
Right.
pictures of them, so.
Commissioner Meade.
I was just going to mention that being an engineer, I think about things like load-bearing walls. But non-load-bearing walls, it's no harder than to move a piece of furniture just about. Anybody with a little bit of carpentry skills can easily do that. They just have to look to see if there's any electrical running in the wall or something, you know, before they take a sledgehammer to it.
I'll just say too, we have some very talented inmates that can do, especially with it not being a load-bearing wall, that can do work such as moving, you know, minimal electrical work, paint, sheetrock, et cetera, that we can make available in whatever venue the commission decides to put them in.
You're on top of it.
Okay.
It's good.
All right, the motion is for that money to be set aside for the purchase of the building?
Yes.
Okay. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Anything else on the building?
Dave Conrad, 7 Wycliffe Place in Clinton, and I am a member of the advisory committee for the senior center. I'd like to discuss or address the issue of possibly the seniors using 205 Main. That part in 205 Main that the driving center used is 400 square feet larger than what you're currently in, which is insignificant. In addition, if you were to do that, it would restrict what you could do with the rest of the property, because all of the other issues with 205 Main, like parking, mixed utilities where it's not split, the electrical's not split, the gas is not split, the water's not split, all of those issues that we had with 205 Main, in addition to the mold issues, still remain. And there's a maximum of 10 parking spots in front of that building. Everybody else has to park in the uneven parking area that is on a slope in that area. So it's just not satisfactory for senior occupation. My opinion, do with it what you want.
Thank you, Dave. Anything else before we move on? Next is Election Commission. Proposed move of space within the courthouse requested by Mark Stevens. Is he in the hallway or?
We got a letter.
No, I got a
We
letter,
got a
said
letter.
he's gonna be here in January, though.
Let me make a motion to defer this issue till the January meeting.
Second.
I see it now. Got a motion second to put it to the January meeting. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Might be a good time to get Mark to go up and look at 205 South Main. You know, the bulk of their space that they need is for their machines. And I think we've already made the decision to move the machines out, right? At last month's meeting?
Well, we were gonna move them into the vault.
Right.
We
And
were making
move our
more
records
space available.
downstairs.
Yes, yes, sir.
And, but that front part, the driving, where the driving school was, would be plenty big enough for his entire operation. And if he needed the garage back there in the back to work on machines or whatever, you know, there's plenty of space there. But sometime between now and our January meeting, I'd like for somebody to get with him and go up and let him look at it and see. I mean, they've wanted to move out of the courthouse for a number of years, and that might be a good fit for them.
Okay. Well, now that you say that, one of the abstract thoughts that I've had, and here a while back, I got sent out a questionnaire about how many pieces of property that we lease, that we pay for other people, and now that we're dealing with ESG, I don't know if that's something they could look at, like if we could raise the roof, what's the cost of raising that roof if we go to like a shed-style roof, where you could move the motor pool over there, because we're going to have savings in what we pay out in lease, so we would have a return on investment. And is that something that we could work in? But that's one of the thoughts I've had. I really hadn't said to anybody about, but if we got that space, would it take $500,000? And if it did, if we can combine three of the places that we're paying a lease on now, what would be the return on investment? You know, things of that idea.
Good comment.
Next is the law director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to mention while you're still on 205 Main, Family Justice Center is looking for space too. They've got some great ideas, so that's something. I don't want to interfere with what the mayor's doing. I certainly applaud her actions, trying to make the best use of that property. The Family Justice Center is going to need some space in the near future. And Sheree, don't forget, you've got pool table, audio up there, you got TVs, you got tables and chairs. You're going to need a moving truck to get all your stuff to wherever you do go. But there's several pieces of recreation equipment and all that, and all those Christmas decorations belong to you also. But the final thing I want to mention on that, we did have an appraisal, and it was done by a certified appraisal on 205 Main Street, and of course it had comparables in it also. But I don't want to question the validity of it. It's done by an MAI appraiser. They have a body of ethics they've got to abide by, just like lawyers. But we did have an appraisal, and it showed that property to be worth, $645 or something when we did buy it. But moving on, I've got a few issues, and I'm going to be quick tonight. The stream restoration project, we've been approached. Does anybody not get the email? I've got copies of it. There's a company down, Mr. Jameson, did you have your email? Anybody need the copy of the email? Okay. There's a company in an environmental firm down in, Mayor, do you need one?
No, I got it.
There's an environmental firm in Chattanooga that's doing environmental credits. I don't know if you know how this works. If you disturb wetlands or you create an environmental issue, you're required to get environmental credits. And they're working with TVA to get environmental credits, and they've identified a stream on Blockhouse Valley landfill. They want to do this free of charge. It costs the county absolutely nothing. I've contacted both Arcadis and Cresso, John Bird with Cresso and Ted Faust. I believe they have no problems with it. They would like to possibly turn it into an educational activity for the students that work with Cresso. But we'll get that complete stream through our property, and also the section that runs down Blockhouse Valley Road they're negotiating with the neighbors down there. They haven't had anybody refuse them, that where that stream runs across those private properties, and it comes across our property and then cuts back on TVA and back down to the river. But anyway, it gives us a chance to get restoration on that stream, get it cleaned out, change the water flow back to the original state, original path. Evidently, it was diverted when the county built Blockhouse Valley landfill, and also give the students that work with Creso a chance to do some environmental projects within the county. But I do want approval on this before we allow them to do it, and if you do want this company to take on this free of charge to the county, I do want them to work through Creso and Arcadis, so we can let John Bird and Ted Faust supervise that, and also Laura Duncan and Bernie Ilgner with Arcadis to make sure there's no conflicts in the work they're doing and the work that's going on. Arcadis is fixing to plant several hundred trees down there. If anybody went down to the last little tour we had, they had to cut down some of the old hybrid tulip poplars. They're replacing those, and that activity's fixing to start in about 3 weeks. So, but anyway, if you want these people to do it, send it to County Commission. They'll be here next week to do a short presentation to County Commission and tell you exactly what they'll be doing.
Motion to refer to full commission, that committee. Second.
Motion second, any discussion, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
You do have the color map attached to the email that I sent you. Next one, the senior center lease extension. I sent that out via email. Does anybody need a copy of it? Ms. Portwood contacted me, sent me an email. She is the landlord of the existing facility. That's where Cherie is at right now. We do know that we're going to be vacating that at some point in the future, but she wanted 3 things added to it, and I did that. Strike that sentence that had the additional doors be added at the cost of the lessor. Then also the portion of sealing of the parking lot, she wanted to put as needed there. Cherie, did you say that they've already sealed that parking lot for you?
They've already fixed the hole.
The hole, okay. And she wants a $50 late fee added after the 10th of the month. The lease called for us to pay her by the 10th. Evidently, she's had some problems getting her money. She wants a $50 fee added if she doesn't have the rent money due by the 10th, or in her possession in the 10th, or in the mail, I'm sorry. And also, she wanted the parking lot repaired where a hole was dug for the purpose of concrete and installing a dumpster, and Cherie's already had that done. So we don't have to worry about it. I put all 3 of these incorporated into the new lease. Again, you have a lease in front of you that has the ability to cancel within 30 days. County Commission wanted that, and you do have also the ability to re-up this if needed, if we still go outside this 1 year, or continue with a month to month. And I think that's what I heard from County Commission. So all those changes are incorporated in this new lease agreement for the existing senior center. And we really don't know how long we'll be there, but we want to shore it up, make sure the seniors do have a place until we can move them to an adequate facility. Any questions on the lease extension for the senior center?
Commissioner Meade?
Make a motion to refer to commission recommending approval.
Motion second, any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes.
Knox Energy settlement is number 3. We do have a settlement from Knox Energy. I want to propose that to you first. I'll send you an email so you'll have all the information ahead of time, and then we'll bring Mr. Alley in, the property assessor, and we need to talk in executive session. As you know, I'm required to present all settlement offers to this county commission, and we'll hear Mr. Alley's viewpoint, and whatever you decide, we'll go back in session after that. I think we've had a lot of luck putting it at the end of the meeting so we don't tie up anybody's time. But we go back in session. If there's any action, we'll take it in the public meeting. I don't need approval on that. I just want to make you aware that we'll call for an executive session during the next county commission meeting next Monday night to present the Knox Energy settlement agreement. For those of you that recall this is a case we've had with the Board of Equalization. It involves oil and gas production facilities in Anderson County. It's only styled Knox Energy, but if the county prevails, it would affect all the other energy production, oil and gas production facilities, companies that are in Anderson County. And what it is, the root of this case is Mr. Alley has begun to assess them for their make-ready or startup cost. That was not captured before. He is now capturing that as personal property. Such things as the road that was cut in there to the facility, the concrete pad, the sleeve, the casing that goes into the ground, the cost of digging the well, all those things, they were not being taxed as personal property before. Mr. Alley is now picking those up at the recommendation of the auditor, and that's where we're at. But anyway, I want you to be aware of the basics of this case. I'll send you the letter I got from, it's actually an email form from the opposing counsel out of Virginia, let you take a look at it, and then we'll go in executive session with the mayor and Mr. Alley, and we'll discuss this case and see what you want to do. Okay, that's all I need on that one.
Could I ask one question on that, Jay?
Yes, sir.
Would that have a positive monetary benefit to the county?
Tremendous,
Okay.
tremendous. If you,
You know, we talked about that
Yes,
just
sir.
before.
If
We
you
talked
take
before
that,
we raised taxes. We talked
if you
about
take that, we've basically got 4 major companies in Anderson County that are pumping oil and natural gas, and none of them have been assessed for their startup cost. There is a piece of case law in the books that's decided by the Court of Appeals that says that they should be assessed as personal property, all startup cost for these wells. And so that's what our position is.
One
And-
other question.
Yes, sir.
Let's say that we do receive a monetary settlement. Where would that money go? Would that still be
That's-
distributed, just like where the schools get 65% and all that, or would it go
Yes,
straight to
sir.
the general fund?
Yes,
It'd
sir.
still go through the distribution process, so if we got several million, that, okay.
Yeah, you've
And
got
that's
two
just
different things.
hypothetical.
You've got a severance portion of that, the taxation off the severance. Then you've got the taxation off the real estate. Then you've got the taxation off the personal property. They all have a little bit different divisions to them,
Right.
but.
They would still all be
you can
divided up. It
see-
wouldn't just go general
Exactly. You
fund.
can see the implications. If the county does prevail in this lawsuit, it'd be times basically 4 with the other companies. It's a rough road ahead. I can't guarantee anything.
So, let me ask you one other trick question. Would any of that go to the highway department to take care of the 2 roads that we've been battling? Severance
Yeah.
tax?
There's a portion of that, yes, that will go to it. If there's any excess money, that would be up to county commission. I
Yeah.
think that's certainly a worthwhile endeavor.
So if we did, we could ask for a certain part of that money to be designated to fix those roads that's been affected from those.
Oh, absolutely. And anything outside of the normal sales tax or normal division of property
Right.
taxes and sales tax is certainly up to county commission's discretion on how you want to utilize that money.
Okay. So if the folks listening at home, and I know they are watching, on Duncan Flats and Braden
Braden
Flats,
Flats.
we may have a resolution.
We hope so.
Yeah.
Let's hope so.
It's not immediate, but we'll see where we're at.
Okay.
Any other
good.
questions on Knox Energy? Okay. The next item I have for you is, got the legislative committee on an issue proposed by Commissioner Meade. We've got a legislative committee meeting scheduled for not this coming Thursday, but Thursday the 19th. That is after our county commission meeting. Of course, the General Assembly goes into session the second week of January, and one of these requests from Commissioner Meade and the Legislative Committee is to take care of 2 statutes. One of them is the ability for people, right now it's county commissioners, judges, and of course law enforcement officers, to carry weapons inside the courthouse during judicial proceedings. That statute was amended last year to allow, 2 years ago, to allow county commissioners to carry guns inside the courthouse. If you so desire, I can draft a resolution, bring it to county commission to enlarge that scope, allow county commission the authority to enlarge the scope. Two options there, to allow people like employees, the mayor, other individuals outside of county commissioners to carry if you have a license to carry permit. Right now, the restriction is if judicial proceedings are in place, you can't carry. So we've got an issue there. The other issue is we've got two laws that appear to be in conflict with one another. And Commissioner Meade, you're the best on this. You want to explain?
The other one is pretty simple, okay? Years ago, they looked at the fact that quite often schools will use a athletic field in a park for a school activity. It was decided, and I don't have any problem with this, that people carrying guns at school activities that happen to be in a park, other than the security assigned and such, probably is not a good thing. But there was also no requirement for any kind of posting. So the law was changed 3 years ago to say that if a person that is lawfully carrying with a handgun carry permit is in a park and they come across an athletic field and they are informed or they discover that there's a school activity there, the law allows them to simply leave, immediately leave, and not be in violation of the law. Right now, there's two new laws that were passed in the former legislative session. They're coming into effect in January. And the big thing it does is it creates a brand new kind of handgun carry permit. The current permit that people have is under Part 1351, and this is a whole new section under 1366. And it's a concealed carry only license, okay? And the training requirements are different, the cost is different. But when they updated the laws, when they made that change, in the park law, 1311, they included this new permit as if you had the old permit under 1351 or the new permit under 1366, and you were in a park and you were carrying lawfully and you came across an athletic field being used by a school, you could just immediately leave. But in 1309, a part of the law that specifically addresses the control of arms at schools and school activities, they didn't include this new license. So a person with the newer license, if they did the same thing, would be guilty of a crime immediately, even though there was no way for them to know because there's no signage requirement or anything.
There's no safe harbor.
There's no safe harbor for a person that's acting otherwise completely lawful. And in one section of the law, 1311, it's specifically called out. And in 1309, this new permit person has just been left off. Right. John Reagan has already said he's on board to get that fixed. And whether or not we do a resolution on that one or not is not really a big deal. But the big one is at the request of the mayor and the full commission, I was asked to research the possibility of commission having more control over the wearing of arms in the courthouse and the Jolly Building during times when there's judicial proceedings in progress. For many, many years, the only restriction on the carrying of arms in the courthouse by anybody that had a permit, okay, was during court proceedings. You weren't allowed to go through our security with any kind of a weapon. That included a penknife, anything, okay? And like going through security at an airport. You just weren't allowed to have anything that even might have been used as a weapon. But then 3 years ago, they changed one word in the 1306 law. Keep in mind, the only time this law is in effect is when there's judicial proceedings in progress somewhere in a building. And they changed room to building. The result is people in the Jolly Building, like the law director and his staff, some of the DA's staff, for them to get into the juvenile court area of the building, the only way they can get there is to leave the building and come into the ground level floor to the court. There's no other way for them to get there. Yet that law change made it a felony for the mayor to have a penknife in her office. Now it's technically a felony because of the way the law is written. I think that's just wrong. Okay, the other thing is, does it really help the security of the courthouse to basically have a sign on the door that says, everybody in here has been disarmed except those sheriff's deputies on the third floor? I don't think that helps. I like the fact that they just don't know how many people are armed, and they don't know how many trained and authorized people there are, and they just know that there probably are some. It's amazing what a deterrent that is to these wackos. If you look at all these mass shootings and wild things, they literally all happen in zones that law-abiding citizens have been disarmed. That's where it happens 95% of the time. And so what I'm proposing is a change to 1306, very similar to the way they did to allow judges to carry even in court, commissioners to carry in the building but not into court, okay, to allow the county to regulate the wearing of arms in the courthouse outside the areas of judicial proceedings, and that we would have the right to regulate it. So I'm saying is like on this third floor, the county commission could decide that if you have a handgun carry permit, you can be on the first, second floor, but when during court, they ain't coming to the third floor. And we right here at our security checkpoint, we could stop it. But the county commission would make that decision. And all that takes, and I researched this and talked with a bunch of people in Nashville, would be to have another amendment to the 1306, which is the guns in courtrooms law, which was expanded to building. Another exception saying that counties by resolution may regulate the wearing of arms in their buildings outside the areas regulated under 1306 for the courtrooms, okay, the way they want to.
Is that a motion?
Well, actually, what I'm asking for is the ability to bypass the legislative committee and get something in your agenda packet on Wednesday for you to fully consider. It would be a recommendation to the General Assembly to make some provisions or some updates to that law and corrections. But that's what we want to do, is to be able to bypass, due to the time restraints, be able to bypass the legislative committee on the 19th and instead have something ready for you to vote on next week. And these are not anything other than recommendations to the General Assembly to take action here or there when they go in session.
This has been discussed multiple times in the legislative committee.
You're making that?
And I'm making a motion that we just have, the law director said he could do this, and there's a couple little minor wording things I want to bounce off of John Reagan before we bring it in next week.
Second.
Second.
Who you got that, Annette? Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. The next item I have is I sent you the motor vehicle lease and release agreements for Roane State, Bryceville, and Claxton volunteer fire departments. These are Sheriff's Department surplus vehicles. I think I mentioned to you probably 6 months ago that the Sheriff's Office had some surplus vehicles. Some of them are in really good shape. And County Commission decided not to take advantage of one for the County Commission's use for conferences. But anyway, I've got those before you. Last night after I sent them out, we got informed that Marlowe wants another one. I don't have that one put together. Captain Sharp he's still out. He'll get the VIN and the tag number and all that. But you've got 4 vehicles in front of you in 3 leases, 2 vehicles going to Roane State Community College, 1 going to the Bryceville Volunteer Fire Department, and 1 going to the Claxton Volunteer Fire Department. They're $10 a year for 5 years. If you'll notice, the provision in here says they must be used as a public safety asset, never used for a private purpose or transferred by lease, title, gift, donation, or any other conveyance. The sole purpose of this lease is to provide a serviceable public safety asset to a not-for-profit entity charged with providing community service and protection of the health, safety, and welfare to our citizens. If they do violate the terms of this lease, the asset reverts back to the county by operation of law. We do have a very broad release and indemnity and hold harmless section in Section 4 there. They're required to have insurance. And in other words, if they're responsible, these 3 entities, whether it's authorized use or unauthorized use, they're totally responsible for these vehicles, maintenance and everything. Have them before you. If you want to approve the one for Marlowe contingent upon the information, I'll have it ready as soon as I get that. But I do have these three for your consideration tonight. If you have questions, we've got Mr. Mays here from the Sheriff's Office, and he'll be glad to entertain any questions for you,
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman, including Marlowe.
Second.
including Marlowe.
Got a motion and a second, discussion.
How many vehicles are we talking about?
Right now, it's 4. If you add Marlowe, it'd be 5.
What's wrong with these vehicles?
Very high mileage, 100,
160.
yeah, to 200,000.
Can we not auction these off?
I'm sure we could. Historically, the government does not make a lot of money off of these older vehicles. I can speak from experience when I go out on a scene if there's a media-driven case, and the work that these volunteer fire departments do is nothing short of amazing to help
I
us.
agree.
And a lot of times when they're out there, it's not a fire. It might be traffic control. It might
First
be
responder
rescue.
stuff.
And so they're having to take out their big rigs, and that just costs them a lot more money. And so we had worked with the chiefs, and we felt that the work that they do for the county and the citizens of the county, that this would be a nice thing for them. One other note, Andersonville, we are still waiting to hear back from the chief on that. Medford declined. So we did, I just wanted the record to show that we have reached out to all of the volunteer agencies for this. For Roane State, for the purposes of that discussion, I do want to note that the agreement, and I don't know if this needs to be in the lease, Jay, or not, but the police chief at Roane State, Chip Kane, we have told them that it does need to be at the Oak Ridge campuses because they do service Anderson County citizens.
Any additional questions? Go ahead.
I have a comment here. I have a sold asset report, and we've sold one, it looks like one police car this year. It was only $650, so it's not, we're not giving them $5,000 cars.
700's it's a big day. Yeah, it's a lot of the cars that we do make a lot of money on are drug seizures, which that by statute that money has to go back into the drug fund. It doesn't go into the general fund. But yeah, it would be minimal, and I think that the fire departments, again, the work that I've seen them do firsthand in the middle of the night is nothing short of amazing. And so I think this would be a nice gesture for them.
Yeah. I also note that this gives them a way they can do it much lower cost most
Yeah.
of the time. But if for some reason these cars, because they're old, break down, they still can go back to what they've been doing with taking a larger vehicle and such.
Yeah, and we want them
So
to.
the reliability is not as big an issue for this kind of use.
Yeah, and we've stripped down the cars as far as, because we want to make sure that the equipment they're using is, in fact, representation of their agency. And also, too, when they go to buy equipment, we're there to help them to find things, that would go in those vehicles. But they seem to be very excited about it.
Okay, we're charging them $50 up front for a 5-year lease. What happens if they blow the thing up the first year and it's not usable? Do we have to give them another vehicle for the remainder of 4 years, or?
I don't believe that's the way the lease is written.
No, that's it. It's specific to that vehicle.
Yeah.
Vehicles won't be replaced unless we come back to you and you authorize another vehicle.
Then it'd be another $50.
Be another $50.
Okay.
Mr. Creasy.
How will these vehicles be marked?
So what, part of
Will
our.
they have blue lights or red lights?
It'll be red. They cannot, per state statute, cannot operate blue lights. Again,
Right.
we have stripped them down to, all of our equipment is removed from the vehicle. They're familiar what their requirements are, but each car would be, I would imagine, they have the ability to keep it unmarked, but my understanding is they're all gonna put their striping package on there, and then their red lights and their package that is more suitable for a fire department.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to see an energetic, I guess might be the word, volunteer fireman pull over someone.
No, that would be, that would definitely, yeah, they wouldn't have the authority to do so.
I know that, yeah.
But they, you know, it would be odd to see a red light pulling you over, but
Yeah.
that would,
And I don't think I'm not saying
No.
they would, but
in the event something crazy happened, we would definitely contact
I would
Mr.
prefer
Yeager.
they be marked Marlow Volunteer Fire Department, Briceville Volunteer Fire
And it
Department.
helps us too when we're on the scene because we have to document who's on the scene, why they're on the scene, et cetera.
Right.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you all. See you Monday night.
Thank you, Mr. Mays. I have one issue left, Mr. Chairman. That is the selection of a mediation panel for the Carl Clifford Smith case. I've kept you up to date on this over the years, a case that started back in '09. Sheriff's Office, a detective that was terminated. It's been going on for a long time. The court has now ordered us to mediation. I need a mediation panel. I prefer to have the mayor involved and someone on the county commission to negotiate this mediated settlement. And I want you to understand, whatever this team does decide, we need to uphold that when we come back to county commission for approval of how we're going to settle it. It's very difficult and to mediate something and allow these people to have the authority to mediate for the county, then bring it back and it's be turned down by county commission. So please, I'm not saying that you have to agree with them, but yield to their decision on this. They'll hear all the factual evidence in the case, and if we're not saying we'll even come to a conclusion with the mediator that's handling the case, but I would think it'll be Judge Fansler out of Knox County. He's handled several cases for us in the past. Terry, if you would like to be involved, I'd like for you to be involved, or your designee. And then the chairman, vice chair, or anybody county commission so decides. But I do want you to understand that they'll be trying to mediate to finality on this case and close it out. As you know, we prevailed at the Chancery Court level, the identification of the sex offender. You know the details, was upheld at Kingston by DCS. It was upheld in Nashville. Then it was overturned by Roane County Chancery Court several years later. They sued us. We won at Chancery Court here. They appealed. The Court of Appeals ordered back pay. That's what we're dealing with. We're also dealing with an issue of front pay. I think our argument's strong to cut off front pay. But anyway, I do need a designated panel. You're free to have more than one county commissioner on there. But I do want the mayor, the sheriff will be involved in it, and I do want at least one member from county commission. This will happen after the 8th of January. The date is not certain, so I'll get with all the individuals that you so determined to be on this mediation team. We'll set a date, and of course, we'll have to see if the plaintiff is, that date is agreeable with that person, so we have to get everybody's calendar, make sure there's not a conflict. It'll happen after the 8th of January, and we'll try to bring back something to close this long-standing case out. Any questions on it? The facts of this case are pretty egregious. I don't like to discuss them in an open forum, but if you need a refreshment of the facts, just call, and I'll be glad to help you with it. Okay. Any questions? I want at least the mayor. She sounds like she's willing to do it, the sheriff, and at least one, as many as 2 or 3 from county commission that would like to do this.
I'd like to recommend Bill Yeager.
He'd be an excellent
I'm
choice.
serious. I'm not joking.
You are serious, I know.
I think he'd be very capable of.
I don't know what the chairman, Wandell's schedule is, but I know he works and all the time, and he's working out of town, so I haven't even approached this with him. But maybe the best thing to do is, instead of deciding on the actual people, is just realize we need to have this on the agenda. Everybody be thinking about somebody that's willing to go forward and serve on this mediation team, and we'll finalize that team
at next Monday's meeting. Is that
Make
okay
a
with
motion, we
you?
refer it to full commission without a recommendation.
Motion second, any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
That's all I have for you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, yes, sir.
How many times do they have to meet? Possibly.
I'm hoping one time.
I didn't know whether it's gonna drag on for 6 years or.
No. Judge Fansler, he likes to move, and he can usually tell within 2 or 3 hours whether or not we can come to a conclusion. If not, we'll have to go back to court. But he doesn't want, don't want to waste his time, and he certainly doesn't want us to waste his time. He's pretty good at these things. But I would say only one day, sir. Okay. Any other questions on this case? That's all I have for you tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next is follow up on VA clinic in Rocky Top. This is just for information. How this thing would work, some people think it's just a VA clinic only, but no, there's new legislation out there that would let veterans go to a chosen, to go to their own doctor or something like that. So, and what's happened in Rocky Top, Lake City is we lost our high school, we lost our grocery store, we lost our hospital, and now we've lost our physicians there. So this is a way to start building back. So that's what that's about. Okay. New business. Any new business? Any old business? Thank you for your time. Meeting adjourned.
We didn't think we approved this plan, okay, I pointed out to the contractors